Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back to Hilaal Live on Channel 347. Thanks for joining us. It's a Wednesday, so we have Fadwa Booley in studio to chat about it's the Soul series. Over the last 2 weeks, we've been chatting about that position you place yourself in or you find yourself in when you get a calling to try something new, something different, and the process that you go through as well. On the WhatsApp line, if you have any questions, if you have any comments, do join us. We'd like to know your thoughts. 079 085 2511. We'll pose those questions through to Fadwa, and she will try her level best to answer them. Fadwa, thanks once again for coming into studio.
You're welcome.
A couple of WhatsApps we had since last week, and it just came through after the show. Unfortunately, I thought, now I've got to ask you those questions when you come back into studio. How or what happens to yourself or oneself if, for whatever reason, you decline this calling? What does your body go through? What does your mind go through?
I'm laughing because I declined it a few times and I used to get migraine.
Ooh,
Yeah.
okay.
So every time I declined it, and then one day I went for body alignment, and then the body alignment practitioner said, "Do you know you've got a gift?" And I made a joke and I said, "Yes." And then she said, "Now why aren't you using it?" So I said, why? She said, because you're getting the migraines because you're declining the calling. So every time she said Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is trying to communicate with me, I was blocking it off and I was getting this energy in my head. And she said, now you need to open it up and allow the information to come through. And the minute I started, this was in 2007, and I did that and I had to go with that calling. And every time I stopped, responding to the calling, I got sick. Every single time. Now I know if I'm getting sick, I'm not listening. So I have to just go quiet and just go with that flow. Otherwise, I'm not going to feel good.
So people would generally find their spiritual aspect, their body, their relationship with their family, all going a bit awry because they haven't listened to themselves from following a certain path.
Yes.
Okay, all right. The other one that came through, and I thought this is quite interesting, is how do we stop people pleasing? Because often enough, that's what we get trapped into, is that we tend to please our family, our friends, because we want to see them happy. We feel they know what's good for us.
Yes. So the people pleasing comes from a space of, if I'm going to please you, you're going to like and accept me. So it all comes from a lack of not accepting yourself.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
So when you're trying to stop people pleasing, you're going to have to choose yourself in that moment. You're going to have to ask yourself, what I'm about to do, how does this impact my life? Right? And if I'm not going to do it, am I going to live in regret? So if you look at somebody on their deathbed, ask them the biggest regret, they'll be able to tell you the biggest regret. Right? Any person, they will tell you that I wish I'd said no more. I wish I'd spend more time with myself, or I wish I'd spend more time on the things that I want to do and not just please other people. It's a common thread. You can ask any nurse speaking to people on their deathbed. It's the common one. So people pleasing, it comes down to, you need to ask yourself, am I pleasing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the process? Because sometimes we're pleasing our parents or peers or spouses, but we're not pleasing Allah. If Allah is calling you on a calling and He's needing you to do His work on earth so that you can represent Him, and somebody else is trying to stop you, who are you trying to please? You need to please Allah at all times.
Of course, yeah, 100%.
And then the people pleasing comes from, you need to ask, do I love and accept myself? And so what if they don't love and accept me?
So along with that, I would imagine comes a lot of soul searching, comes a lot of those hard questions, those difficult questions that you need to ask yourself. And with that comes a level of consciousness. So what would be the first level of consciousness when you're going through this? Okay,
the first level of consciousness is your victimhood. So now you're going to blame others, you're going to blame circumstances, you're going to blame all the things that I should have done this and I could have done this and if only, right? That's pushing a type of depression because you're trying to go back in the past and trying to change the past. If only I did this. Now there's a part in the Quran where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about death. I can't remember which surah it is. I'm just going to tell you from my perspective. And He says that if you're saying, if only I did this, and if only that person never went at that time, then it wouldn't have been maybe killed, then that means you're unhappy what I've written, right? So that's about going in the past. And if you're trying to prevent the future, that means you're not trusting me. So if I look at that, I look at the scale of depression and anxiety. When you're going in the past, you're trying to change the past. That means you're not happy with Allah has written, because your entire life is written, right? We got the memories of it. We've got the perception of it and the memories of it.
Right.
By you trying to go back, you're trying to change it. It can't be changed. You can change your perception of it. And then the same with the future. So now if you're doing the could have, should have, would have, that means you're in victimhood mentality.
Right.
Blaming other people for your circumstances, blaming Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for your circumstances. That's the first level of consciousness, the blame game, the victimhood. Then the second level of consciousness is your manifesto consciousness. Now you start waking up. This is where Allah gives you the hidayah to say, come, wake up now. You need to start doing the work that I'm doing and I want you to do. Right now, you're going to come across stuff like your affirmations. You're going to come across stuff like goal settings, and you're going to be inspired by that. Now, you must know, if you become inspired by such things, that means it's Allah's calling you down that level of consciousness, your second level of consciousness. The victimhood people is not going to understand you. They're going to make fun of you. I remember in 2006 when I discovered mind power and law of attraction and your secret and stuff. I was on a buzz. My family never understood me. They would roll their eyes at me. Today they come to me and they ask me, okay, how do you do this? How do you do that? Because I'm already practicing for so many years. So you will go through that process where people are going to judge you.
And how does that process, the secret, what's the word I'm looking for? How does that
mind
all
power?
fit into our deen?
Okay, so if you look at mind power, what they say, what you think about, you bring about. There's a thing where they say that every thought in your mind is dua, whether negative or positive. So if you're thinking negativity, what does Allah say? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, I am how you think I am. So if I am how you think I am and you're negative all the time, okay, I'll be that to you. You can get. Your wish is my command. You want to be negative, I'll give you negativity.
Gotcha.
So if you're positive and you're thinking of what you'd like to get, what you'd like to be, how you'd like to be, how you see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He's going to be exactly that. So when people listen to me talk, my Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is love, is pure love. He's amazing, He's merciful. I get that from Him. He's my best friend. So I bring that out, because if I'm going to complain and say, oh, He's an angry God, you're going to get the angry God. So yes, Allah can be angry, because He warns us, if you're not living your life like you're supposed to, and you're not worshiping me and you're not grateful to me, I can get angry. He warns us that. So what would we rather have? A merciful, loving God, or an angry God?
Absolutely. During this time that you are doing your whole self-awareness and you're pushing through that barrier of taking the next step, it can be uncomfortable though.
Yes.
It can unsettle you. It can unravel you in certain aspects, and not just you, the people around you. Because they probably look at you and think, okay, midlife crisis, let him just buy his Harley and get on with life. But not really, because it's to do with your literal how you live your life. Literally how you live your life.
And it's not only how you live your life, it's what happens in the dark. Because I went through the dark night of the soul. When I went through the space, I was like, nobody understands you. But there's so many people that went through it. So we think that nobody understands, but there's so many people going through the same thing at the same time, especially with shifting. So shifting in that consciousness, it's an excruciating pain that you can't explain, right? You feel alone. You feel like nobody understands you. You're crying buckets of tears. My pillow used to be soaking wet because I was alone crying in the middle of the night. And all you can do is just rely on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And you must know, in the exam, the teacher's usually quiet. So now it's like, where is Allah? Why is He not responding to me? I'm making dua and nothing's happening. It's because in that time, as your soul growth, you have to, He's like ripping you apart.
Right.
You're in that metamorphosis and you're busy growing, like that butterfly is busy growing in that cocoon. And you can't get out of there sooner, because otherwise you're not going to fly. If you're going to open that cocoon before the time, you're not going to be able to fly.
So now we've followed our path. We've gone down this road. We've taken that leap into the next step of our life. How do we deal with that part?
So the next
step.
Do we make
shukr? Do we?
Yes. You need to make shukr all the time. No matter if you're in that excruciating pain. I remember I used to say shukr ya Allah. Like, oh, like, but thank you, but it's not nice. Make it stop, that type of thing. So you need to be in that gratitude all the time. And this is where the test is, because Allah said, I'm going to test you with difficulty. Are you still going to be grateful to me? So when you're grateful, I give you more. Now you say, are you giving more of the test, or what are you giving me more of? That seems to be my question, because I've got like this wicked sense of humor. And the way I used to speak, like I'm speaking Allah, like, okay, enough now. Can you stop already? But then you see, then that client will come into that room And then next minute, I know exactly what to say. And it's like, oh, no wonder I had to go through that because now this person's going through the same thing. And then it's like, okay, Allah, I know, I get it, you know? So it's like that reward afterwards. It's that immediate gratification to say, I've done the work and now I can guide somebody and hold space for someone else.
Okay.
You know?
That's important.
Yes.
Right there is also allowing that process to happen, because that must be such a, weight off your shoulder.
Yes.
Right there.
Now, you must remember when I first went through my thing and I went to my mentor, Dr. Franz Kromout, and I told him, like, this is happening to me. And he sat back in his chair and he giggled and he said, oh, you're going through a midlife crisis. I said, make it stop. I just said, make it stop. And he said, no, we can't make it stop. You have to go through it. I said, I don't like this. It's not a nice feeling and I can't deal. And he just said, there's nothing I can do. You have to go through it. This was 2.5 years ago.
Well, come to the end of our session.
Oh, damn.
It's always one of those bittersweet moments,
Yes.
because we look forward to our next session. But do you have any courses, classes coming up
Yes.
that our viewers can tune into?
Yes. So the next one is the Love Thyself. And then the pensioners one will be Abundance, will be Honor Thyself.
Okay.
So that will be out on social media, Facebook and Instagram, Fadwa Booley. And yeah.
Excellent. Fadwa, thanks so much for
You're
coming into
welcome.
the studio. Have a wonderful evening. Assalamu
You
alaikum.
too, inshallah.
And that's how we end our Soul series for this Wednesday with Fadwa Booley. Coming up after the break, Advocate Yusuf Khan Dalwai. We chat about a very interesting topic as well. Last week we chatted about wills, and stems from that is deceased estates, what to do, how to handle it, some of the pertinent questions. The WhatsApp line will be open, so you're welcome to pose your questions through to Advocate as well. You are still watching Hilaal Live. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome to another edition of Hilaal Live from our Cape Town studios. My name is Luqman Shadrack. Thanks for joining us on channel 347 and live streaming on www.hilaal.tv. It's Wednesday, and as we do on a Wednesday, we invite on the Soul series back in studio Fadwa Booley. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam.
Jazakallah so much for coming through, and
Jazakallah khair.
always encouraging on a Wednesday. It sort of just lifts us up from the couple of tough days that you've had, the Monday, Tuesday.
Yes.
Generally, you plan a bit more on those days, and Wednesday, bit of a, in the middle, and you need that little bit of boost to get you through the end of the week as well. So always appreciate you coming into studio.
Thank you.
Last week we spoke about one's calling and not to ignore, how to look out for some of the signs. And we had quite a few WhatsApps that came through. Unfortunately, I couldn't get to them on the show as well. But Jazakallah so much. And we're going to open the WhatsApp lines again today. So if you'd like to be part of the show, do get hold of us on 079 085 2511. Send us through your WhatsApps, and I'll pose those questions, comments through to Fadwa. So Fadwa, one of the questions that came through is that when you hear this calling, or when this calling, this epiphany happens about a life-changing moment, does it appear in your 20s, in your 30s, in your 40s, or does it appear as one progresses through life?
I think I would say mine was as I progressed through life.
Okay.
My calling was different ages, different times, different circumstances, and definitely through one's life. It's not just specific, but mostly what I've noticed, a common thread now, at least recently that I've noticed for the last 2-3 years, is the 40s. So now the knocking comes at the door and say, okay, if you look at our Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, he got his revelation at 40.
Correct.
So most men get that at 40, and they call it the midlife crisis, right? I call it the midlife crisis. This is where you really question everything, especially if you're in a corporate setting like mainstream corporate, then you start questioning your entire life. Most of them say, I don't want to be this in corporate any longer. I want to do my own thing.
Right.
That's one of the callings.
Because you get that epiphany where you think to yourself, okay, I've worked for almost 20 years, thereabouts. I've got sufficient experience. I've networked with various people. I am a specialist in my position, in my company. I can do this on my own. So I would imagine a lot of your clients speak to you about that.
Yes, they do. And a lot of clients are also fearful because they're so used to the comfort and the security of the salary. So I asked them, so what's stopping you from doing it? They said, oh, well, that's the salary at the end of the month. You must remember, you're self-employed. I've never, ever worked for a boss. Alhamdulillah. I grew up in a household with 2 thriving parents. right? My mom was in home industries and my father was in interior and manufacturing, woodwork and manufacturing. So I only saw two parents basically hustling,
Right.
I would call it,
Right.
right? And now I don't call hustling, I call it an alignment, and everything falls into place.
Right.
So I've never ever worked for a boss. My father was my boss. I never looked at him as my boss because he was my father. So I don't know what it's like to work for a boss.
Okay.
And through that, I know exactly how to make money. And now when I see the potential of someone else and I see the quality of maybe the products that they have or who they are, I'll give them that idea of how they can become self-sufficient and become self-employed. The only difference is working for a boss and being self-employed is the owner of that company never stops working. Your mind works all the time, right? Working for a boss, you can shut off. If you're self-employed, you can't shut off because you're constantly thinking of the next day, the next month, the next,
of course,
the next, right? The only difference is that you do have your own time. You can take off if it's a day when your kids have something at school, or
the alternative is that you may not also take off because you work in 7 days a week. I know I've got friends that own a hair studio, and they would literally work 7 days a week.
Okay, but then I'd employ somebody and take over. But something like a hair studio and you're a stylist, people can book for you. Like with my practice, I can't just put somebody there because I am the kinesiology practice, basically, right? Even with workshops, I am the knowledge behind that. So it does take a toll on a person sometimes, but if you structure it properly. So when somebody's trying to step out of the corporate and I encourage them to become self-employed, it's that fear of the safety net. It's the fear of.
Absolutely. I think in this day and age as well, where jobs are more difficult to get, even if you are self-employed, it is a hustle. It is always planning and making sure that your next project is there in order for you to earn a living. Another question that came through on the WhatsApp line as well is they often ask themselves, and I'm paraphrasing here, is who am I and why am I here? So very similar to what we spoke about now. If you're in a corporate job, you have this. These are some of the questions that often gets asked, I would think.
Yes, because when you're in your 40s especially, you start asking, I've worked so hard, I've worked so long, who am I? I'm a wife. Am I really happy? I'm a mother. All my time goes to my children. They lose themselves. And then I put them on this healing journey of taking time out for yourself. So when you're going through this whole transition, when I do the follow-up to the calling is going to be thriving in the crisis that you're in, you need to take time out. You need to set about an hour out for yourself. I usually take that time out before Fajr and after Fajr. That hour because the house is still quiet and everything and I can think and your phone isn't ringing yet. You know, so that time I take out and I journal. I'll sit in my bed and I'll journal, or I'll sit and recite Quran, or I'll just find something of use for me, not necessarily social media. Because now I'm allowing my body to just unwind and start the day. So when you look at an hour, you take 60 minutes, you divide it into 3. So I learned this in the book of Robin Sharma. His latest book is the 5 a.m. Club. Right? So you get up 5 o'clock in the morning. So if you look at all the wealthy folk, they get up 4 o'clock in the morning. Look at our Tahajjud time. It's between that time. It's like the 3:30 to 4 o'clock before Fajr. Because that is a time where the sama is at the brightest of color. It's the whitest, purest light. So when you're in sujood that time, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, when you ask me, I'm there to assist. I'm down to the lowest of heaven. So is basically listening to who is calling out to him because he can't wait to answer us.
Of course.
Now that time of the morning is called the golden hour. So not only in Islam we know this time, but in other religions as well. So in Hinduism, Buddhism, they talk about that golden hour. They talk about 3:33. So sometimes you get woken up. So if you get woken up in that time, look at the clock. You'll sometimes see 3:33 or 3 o'clock or between that time. That's because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is waking you up at that time because He wants to spend alone time with you. So if you can spend an hour with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at that time, you've got 1 extra hour in your day because now you can make tahajjud, you can sit with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you sit with your goals, you can sit and just write your thoughts out on page, right? 1 hour at least. Yes, you're going to take your time out of your sleep, but that's a better because you're going to be rejuvenated.
Of course.
Also, the whitest light and putting back into your system the energetical field of, how can I put it, when you're raising your vibration. So with your head down on the musalla in sujood, keep your head down as long as possible. And in that time, you speak to Allah with your head in sujood. Because the core, the earth's core is a big magnet that is going to pull out all that negativity out of your body, but it's also going to rejuvenate you at the same time. So as it's pulling out, it's pulling back. Right? So now you're going to raise your vibration. So do that at that time of the morning.
You know, we speak about this calling, we speak about this push towards doing something different as well. At times, society can put a lot of pressure on you to not go down this path as well. Do we fall into this trap quite easily?
Yes, because of their fear. They see you change. So what is society like? They like all of us actually. I don't like change. So when you see somebody else changing and you can't control any longer, what happens? The fear sets in. So when you are when your body is riddled with guilt, you can easily be manipulated by anybody else. And with guilt, you'll justify. So when you feel guilty, you'll justify all your actions.
Right.
The person that is explaining the life away, that's a person that carries a lot of guilt. And sometimes it's not even their own guilt, sometimes it's unconscious guilt. Sometimes it's generational guilt that they carry. Sometimes not even their own stuff, it's in the genetic DNA. So with kinesiology and what I normally find out, I check if they are guilty. Is it their own stuff? Is it their mother's stuff? Is it the grandmother's stuff? Where in the generation does this form? And we need to find that and we clear it from the system. So when there's guilt, you will find that the people that doesn't like you or don't like you to now succeed, they will guilt trip you. They will tell you, you've changed so much. I've heard how I've changed.
So it's more about them than you.
Yes, it is more about them. Because they don't like the changes you are going through because it's making them uncomfortable. Remember, your growth is going to trigger somebody else's who's not growing.
Stability, or just not going anywhere.
Not stability, really, more like stagnation.
Stagnation, that's the word.
Yeah. So it's going to trigger that because now they're seeing you growing, and now it's like feeling, if they can do it, I can do it, but the growth is the hard work. The calling is the hard part.
And to put in that effort,
yes,
that's where the life-changing moment comes in, because all those lessons that are learned in that process, it's something that's going to stick with you
forever.
For quite a long time.
But guess what? That lessons is the wisdom.
Oh, yes.
That is how you become wise.
Absolutely.
So if you're not going to do those lessons and the hard parts, how are you going to become wise?
Absolutely.
You know?
Very interesting, but we need to go for a short break. We'll be back. The WhatsApp line is open. If you'd like to correspond with Fadwa in studio, you're more than welcome to send us a WhatsApp, 079085 2511, and we'll pose your questions or comments through to Fadwa. Also look at some of the amazing workshops that she's got coming up very, very soon. You are still watching Hilaal Live.